the Digimon TCG is about to be turned on its head. We have a ban list that's going to be dropped this Friday, March 17th, and will be effective April 1st. And that ban list is going to be effective for both us players here in the West and those on the JP side as well. And whereas previous ban lists have been there to address maybe one or two problem cards, in this case we have a very lengthy list of suspects. And if Bandai really goes to town on this potential list of suspects, we are going to emerge with a very different format on the other side. So what I want to do is take a little time to look at the most likely suspects, the guys who are most likely to get a hit this time around, and in particular discuss why one or two of them might not be getting the hit yet. Sounds good? Okay, then let's jump to it. Alright guys, so first card on the list is the X-Antibody Wundertamer Cool Boy. It's a search, it draws cards, and it gains memory when X evolving, and it does all of that for the low cost of 2. Cool Boy single-handedly, I think, took the already stellar consistency of X antibody decks and ramped it to frankly ridiculous levels. Establishing just one Cool Boy on average provides more value to the X antibody deck than a memory boost would for a regular deck. Getting multiple of these in play basically allows for free Digivolution and enough search and draw for the X antibody decks to always see their combo pieces. Now, I think the consistency and speed here kind of compounds what is the biggest issue that I personally have with the X antibody decks, and that's the fact that they are pretty much all at the competitive level OTKs. Whether it's Alphamon, Grandis, Melga, or even Wargreymon X, X antibody decks, generally speaking, just want to line up their pieces, get that perfect stack, and go in for a big one-turn kill. Normally, this would be really hard because you need to get that perfect stack, and obviously you need a ton of memory to assemble all of those pieces and go in for the big swing. Probably more memory than your standard memory tamer is giving you. But thanks to Cool Boy, you've likely drawn into all of those pieces, and thanks to the memory gain on X Evolution, it's possible to go from Champion to Mega, or from Ultimate to Mega and beyond in the same turn. And that's before you add in the Warp Digivolution that the X Antibody option card gives you. So honestly, for the health of the game, I think Cool Boy needs to be limited to 1. It basically needs to be for the X Antibody meta archetype what Ice Wall and Hidden Potential are for blue and green respectively. Just a nice consistency booster, it's a little sacky when you get it, but it's not overpowered at a single copy. But there's a chance that Cool Boy doesn't go anywhere because we do have more X antibody support coming down the pipeline. And yes, limiting this would break the back of the archetype, at least for the foreseeable future. You do that, and suddenly it's way harder to sell all of your busted new cards, especially the busted new X antibody archetype that will totally replace whatever the top deck in the meta is. Right? So think of Melga and Alphamon helping to sell BT9 up the wazoo, in addition obviously to DeathXmon, and then Black Wargreymon X helping to move a ton of BT11 product. Now, I hope it's not the case, but I think it is possible that Cool Boy is going to stick around for a couple more formats, at least until Bandai gets bored of printing X antibody support, or they give us a much fairer retrain, probably around the time that they get bored of printing X antibody support. Next up, I have the current face of Greymon.deck, Greymon X Antibody. This card benefits from the copious amounts of both X Antibody and Greymon support, making it highly searchable, memory efficient, and pretty much always live. Now, Bandai did attempt to somewhat balance this card by giving it a 3 EVO cost as a level 4. But this is of course circumvented by the fact that X Evolution is a mechanic that exists, and instead of at least giving it a 1 to evolve on top of a Greymon, they let it go on top of a Greymon for free. Now, this card itself cheapens the cost of going into a Greymon, the level above, by 1 for every color that next level has. So in the current Western card pool, this makes pretty much all Metal Greymons and Rise Greymons cost 2. That's already pretty cracked. But I want to let everybody know that we have a dual color Metal Greymon coming in BT12 that actually evos for just 3 on a Greymon, which means if it's going on top of this, it costs 1. That is too much advantage already. But this card does more. As an inherited effect, Greymon X can save a Greymon or Omnimon at the top of its stack, from deletion, bounce, or spin effects by bottom decking an equipped X antibody option card. Now, you'll almost always have this thanks to the search provided by Coolboy and other X antibody consistency pieces, which means that most of the time you're going to be climbing into a nigh unkillable stack, and you're going to be doing it on the cheap. This card, frankly, needs to go. Even at 1, I think it still might be too good because of how searchable Greymons and X antibody cards are, and of course how much cycle the X antibody deck has access to. Especially if Coolboy does not get hit. You will still find your Greymon X every time, and it's going to feel like the sackiest of one-ofs. So I think it's fair to say that, yeah, I would like to see this card be banned outright, but at most, I think Bandai will just limit this to 1 to kind of weaken the grip that Black War Greymon X has on the global meta, and of course, soften the impact of the Raid War Greymon coming down the line. And from one fan favorite Digimon to another, we now have to look at the Were Garurumon promo, or as I like to call it, Swing Swing Win. So when attacking, as long as you have a Garurumon in the stack, this card will unsuspend once per turn. Now, this actually used to be pretty balanced because this card has a low DP of 6,000, at least for a level 5, so it was pretty unwise to actually swing into security with it. But now thanks to the Melga X line and the promo Sagittarius mode, you get protection from deletion in battle, meaning you can swing with little concern. Oh, you crashed into a big body in security, no problem, just detach 2 sources and keep going. Now, this is bad enough on its own, but paired with the X antibody version, a promo Garurumon, and its own powerful inheritable, this one card just becomes absolutely too much value. The inheritable gives you security attack +1 if you have 8 cards in hand, and you know what, you're blue, you're gonna get 8 cards in hand. But you can also draw into those 8 cards pretty easily thanks to the promo Garurumon. That card has a non-once per turn effect to draw when attacking if you are a Garurumon. So, you swing twice, you draw 2 cards, and then you climb up into the next piece, which is the Were Garuru X. The X Doggo unsuspends, giving you another swing, bounces a level 4 or lower, potentially clearing a blocker, and now you're free to swing in for 2 checks with battle protection. So if you're keeping track, you are basically at 4 damage to your opponents so far. If you have access to Coolboys, memory boosts, Davis, or some Hammer Sparks, or some combination of the above, and spoiler alert, you will because you've been drawing a ton of cards on swing, well, then you can keep comboing, potentially going up into Melga X, which gives you a 5th swing, another bounce, and an instance of blocker. And then from there, you can basically hybrid for game if you have the memory, you can blitz Omni for game, or you can just ruin your opponent the next turn because there's no way that they can keep up, and you've probably bounced their entire board while you're at it. Limiting the promo Doggo, I think, makes the combo less consistent, although I also don't think it kills the deck outright, because you still have a ton of swings on the way up, and there are other Were Garurumons that can give security attack +1. But still, it might be enough to at least make the deck so unappealing that it just naturally falls off, especially if there are big hits to, let's say, Black War Greymon X and Grandis. People might still say, well, this isn't quite good enough, so yeah, let's just put Melga aside. And really, I think this needs to go to just to prevent the breaking of any future Garurumon support. Since Garurumon as an archetype really loves to multi-swing, it's been doing that since the Garurumon starter deck came out, way back at the start of the game, and they're going to continue doing that. And let's be honest, Garurumon X and Sagittarius mode probably aren't going anywhere on the ban list, so that battle protection is going to be there forever. Our next card on the list is Kel'Surprise, another promo, and a very old one at that. Grand Kawagamon promo. Now, this bug is a big OTK enabler. Basically, it allows you to digiburst away some sources to gain instances of security attack +1. Back in the day, this more or less got you 3 damage total if you climbed up from the egg to a mega. But with X Antibody and its evolution mechanic making stacks way taller, you'll probably have more sources to digiburst out. And this is where X Antibody, of course, rears its ugly head and basically creates another OTK monster. So Grandis Kawagamon can go on top of the promo, which basically lets it swing twice while suspending the opponent's Digimon. You can swing for that 3 damage twice, potentially doing the warp with the X Antibody option card, and at the end of those 2 swings, you've pretty much cleared your opponent's security stack. And like with Melga, if you have the memory left over or the combo pieces on hand, you can finish the game from there, maybe tapping a Mimi to promote something out, or just going for a hybrid on top of the Tamer. Or you just sit there having wiped out your opponent's security and their board, and you just say, well, what are you gonna do? Grandis, of course, also benefits from Cool Boy and the X antibody mechanics in general, making it a lot easier to line up its perfect stack. And thanks to a promo Okuamon, which is a pretty reasonable suspect for the ban list as well, it has the ability to make some pretty absurd memory-efficient plays, give the stack piercing, so, doesn't have to necessarily go in right for security, it can also punch over your Digimon and still ruin your day. And of course, the Okuamon's effect actually applies a kind of floodgate memory effect to you as well, so trying to clear the stack on the comeback becomes a little bit more memory inefficient for you as well. Now, all of that said, and while the Okuamon promo is a piece I personally like to see go as well, I think at least if you take the promo Grand Kuwagamon out of the equation, then Grandis can no longer OTK. It's still a really scary deck, it can do a ton of field control, and it can still do some pretty significant damage with those 2 swings, but it's not that overpowered, and I think at that point it would fall off naturally, so, this is the card to hit. Alright, now putting aside the suspects for the ban list on our side of the pond, I want to look at what might be hit for the JP side, which, is basically our future timeline. And the one card that I hear is earning the most ire recently is Calciprese, an X antibody card, specifically Beelzemon X antibody. Now, basically what this guy does is when you evolve into it from Beelzemon, or from a level 5 with the X antibody and stack, doing the whole swing warp thing, you trash your opponent's security. You burn 1 card for every 10 cards that you have in your trash. Okay, so that's not too bad, except for the fact that Beelzemon as a deck is all about the turbo self-mill. So most of the time, when you actually get into this card, you're gonna pretty easily have at least 20 to 30 cards in trash. And that's at minimum, you can have a lot more. So on the swing, you burn 2 to 3 security. Now, most of the time, Beelzemon X is going on top of the new starter deck Beelzemon. He's a potent boss monster in his own right, milling on Digivolution, gaining memory back in relation to the size of your trash after that mill, and getting security attack +1 as well whenever you mill a card. So this under a Beelzemon X can basically represent anywhere from 4 to 5 damage on average. If you're keeping track, that is more often than not your entire security stack. Are you tired of hearing OTK yet? And you can actually pull off this combo from the rookie level, since the starter deck Impmon will warp into a Beelzemon if you have at least 20 cards in trash. So slide in the X antibody underneath the Impmon before you swing, and Bob's your uncle. And hey, if you need that last swing for game, fear not, you go into the new Blast mode. You gain 3 memory as long as you have minimum 20 cards in trash, you unsuspend, and then you can swing for game. I don't think I need to point out that this is an absurd level of aggression, and at least in the game right now, there is very little counterplay to self-mill strategies outside of Omnimon Merciful mode, and chances are you're going to lose the game before you ever establish that level 7 anyway. And of course, you don't want to open up the weird Pandora's box of having decks that put cards back on the top of the opponent's deck or put things away in the hand, because we don't want to end up with a weird control archetype. I was very sick of that in Pokemon, I don't want to see that here. Now, all of that said, I don't think limiting this to 1 is even going to make a difference. Now, why do I say that? Well, it's because really you only need 1 Beelzemon X antibody. Because of the way that the Beelzemon deck works, milling all of its stuff, you are always going to see your pieces, and don't forget, Beelzemon is a purple archetype, so you have plenty of tools to get those pieces back, including a couple of in-archetype option cards that will place themselves on the field when milled, and will allow you to either get some nice deletion effects or pull back key combo pieces when the time comes. And honestly, Bandai is not going to ban this guy because that's really going to kill the sales for us of the Beelzemon starter deck, and it's going to leave a pretty sour taste in the mouths of Beelzemon fanboys everywhere. So yeah, while this card might go to 1, it's not going to matter. It's not going anywhere. Now, if you thought DeathXmon was an absolute scourge, wait until you meet Quartzmon. This Chrono Anomaly is the boss monster for the upcoming Hunters archetype, but it's also found its way into a number of green and black decks as a panic button / finisher. So what does it do? Well, when digivolving, it stuns everything else on the board, barring options with delay effects. All Tamers and all Digimon go sideways, and they don't unsuspend at the start of the turn. Now, once that lockdown is in place, Quartzmon's second effect comes into play. For every 5 suspended Digimon or Tamers in play, it'll trash the top card of the opponent's security when attacking. Now, the Hunter's deck is a Tamer spam deck that also runs plenty of low-cost Digimon, so they'll very often have a full board to power up Quartzmon's when attacking effect. And of course, you'll likely have a few pieces in play as well, so if you can't out the Quartzmon immediately after it comes down, it is going to just shred through your security. Now, don't let the crazy costs or color of this Digimon deceive you, because in its own deck, it is stupid easy to get into it. And you can get into it over and over again thanks to Astamon. Astamon itself can warp Digivolve from a Psychmon, and when Digivolving, if you have enough sources in play, you can basically warp into Quartzmon on the cheap and reduce the cost by 3. The Tamers, such as Ryoma, will cheapen Astamon's Digivolution by placing save sources from underneath them into the stack. So basically you can do that whole combo and then just establish the big board lockdown. And again, they can do this all from Psychmon, a rookie, and they can do it in a very memory efficient way because you basically Digicross on Digivolution, which is the whole mechanic of the deck there. This combo is a little too consistent, and it leads to an extremely aggravating board state. If you thought getting stunned by blue hybrids was bad, this is toxic on another level entirely. Basically, if you don't have some kind of pop effect on Digivolution, and it's tough to out level 7s, let's keep that in mind, or if you don't have the Gaia Force in hand, for example, you have no answer to Quartzmon and you've lost the game. So personally, I think Quartzmon should go to 1. I wouldn't necessarily say ban it outright because then you just totally break that deck. And since this card does get teched into things like Bloomlord and D-Brigade, which can get to a cheap level 6 easily enough, it is a problem, but green and black do kind of need a decent level 7. So I don't want to see it go necessarily, but just don't have it be that easily accessible. But hey, if Quartzmon doesn't go, then you definitely need to limit Astamon to stop the abuse of it in the Hunter's deck, because they'll just have it over and over and over again. And there are ways to cheat Quartzmon underneath the Tamers, which means that you can consistently have access to it as well. And finally, the last card I want to discuss on the JP side of things is BT12's Marcus Damon. The Shine Greymon archetype has a cool trick of turning Marcus Damon into Digimon for the turn, allowing them to attack, block, and do other stuff as needed. This is really effective because most of the Shine Greymon line can cheat Marcus Damon into play with their own effects, and can basically tuck Marcus into security if he gets deleted. So essentially, you have a Tamer Rush loop, which is kind of cracked. So yeah, that's pretty good already, but it gets even better since this Marcus allows you to Digivolve up into your Shine Greymon line for free when it suspends. So Marcus can swing in, turn, let's say, a Rise Greymon into a Shine Greymon for free, and now if Marcus dies on the swing, Rise Greymon's Inheritable tucks him into the security. So hey, it just recovered 1 on the exchange as well. Now you have a Mega in play, and if your opponent does any damage the next turn, Marcus just comes out again, and the Shine Greymon player can rebuild their stack if you cleared it, or potentially go up into Burst Mode for free. This is a bit much, and since parts of the Shine Greymon line can also do ridiculous things like give Marcus security attack +1, make him a 12,000 DP body with Rush, etc., well, you can see why Marcus Damon's spam needs to be knocked down just a notch, And hey, the other versions of Marcus are still really good, and limiting this to 1 doesn't necessarily kill the deck because there is plenty of search, and as I mentioned, plenty of ways to cheat Marcus out. So the deck will still have easy access to this, they'll still be able to find this all the time. It'll just be a sacky one-of in that particular case. But at least if you limit it, it makes Shine Greymon as a deck a little bit less oppressive than it's currently been in Japan. Okay, and those are my predictions for the cards that are most likely to get hit on the ban list this time around, with the caveat, of course, that Cool Boy and Beelzemon X might just skirt by. In the case of Cool Boy, it really just comes down to Bandai consistently printing the X antibody archetypes. They keep printing broken X-antibody archetypes, which obviously sell product, especially to the more competitively minded players. And with regards to Beelzemon, you don't want to hit that when BT12 has not come out just yet in the West. And of course, we have a Beelzemon starter deck coming down the road too. So nerfing the archetype before we even get our hands on the first couple of cards, well, it's not really a good look, is it? Now, I want to thank Agito Swiftly for talking to me for hours and hours at length about all the potential bans. There was a much larger list that I wanted to discuss here, and I've actually put that much larger suspect list in the pinned comment below. So, the discussion continues on from here. There are a lot of other broken cards. There are a lot of pieces that we touched on briefly that maybe also deserve the hit, if not now, a little bit down the road, but we just didn't have time to cover them here. I'd also recommend that you guys go and check out Agito Swiftly Gaming's channel. He posts fantastic deck profiles, breakdowns of the EU meta, and I hear very soon he's going to be casting events on the EU side as well. So head on over there and give him a very well-deserved sub. And hey, subscribe here, obviously, if you haven't already. Make sure to like the video if you found this at least somewhat informative. And again, I would encourage you guys to discuss the potential hits in the comments section below. Be civil, be cool, be chill. It's not the end of the world, although I think if Bandai does what they need to do, things are going to be very interesting on the other side. So with that, guys, I will leave you to it. I am going to chill and wait patiently for the ban list to drop, and I'm sure we will all be reacting to the results together very, very soon.